Hello, everyone. Our program today on HumanSpirit Radio is Tapping Zero Point Energy, Unleashing the Future, Part 2. Last month, in Part 1 of the series, my guest was internationally known lecturer, author, and Zero Point Energy researcher, Maury B. King. If you missed that interview, you can find it in our archives at HumanSpiritRadio.com. Today, my guest is Jamie Janover of the Resonance Science Foundation, and we'll be delving into how zero-point energy relates to the unified field as well as ancient technologies and its real potential as the breakthrough technology that, in my opinion, can liberate humankind and place us back in right relationship with a thriving, healthy, natural world. Before I introduce Jamie, let's take a few moments to connect in heart resonance and potentiate our shared field of consciousness with a quick grounding. So if you'll just take a few breaths and let yourself drop into your body, into this beautiful vehicle you inhabit currently. And just imagine in front of you a red rose. We're going to use a tool by Jim Self. Just imagine in front of you a big red rose. And we're going to ask this rose to collect up any of your energy and all of your energy that you may have left somewhere else in a conversation, in a good book, wherever you may have left yourself. And just ask this red rose to absorb all your energy from all these many places and bring it back right in front of you. And then ask the rose to break up into a million pieces, bringing that energy, your energy, back to you, just breathing it right into your heart, all cleared, neutral, just breathing your energy back to you. Great. And then imagine another rose, whatever color you prefer, and ask this rose to absorb any energies that are in you that belong to someone else. Any ways you may be holding someone else's energy. Could be collective, it could be a person, just allowing any energies that don't belong to you to be absorbed out of your body and into this rose. Great. And then give the command to the rose to, again, break up into a million pieces and distributing that energy that belongs to other people, giving it back to them, cleared, neutralized, with loving intent, returning that energy back to whomever it belongs to. And just take a couple of breaths and notice how that may feel different in your body. And then just imagine a cord of energy going from the base of your torso down and the bottoms of your feet down into the earth, all the way through the layers, sand and rock and magma, to the center of the earth. Making a nice connection with this beautiful planet for consciousness, source of our lives here. Good, and then just gently breathe that energy back up through the layers, back into the bottoms of your feet, filling your legs, filling your body, torso, chest, neck, arms, hands, head with this beautiful earth energy. Wonderful. And then imagine a little fountain of energy coming out the top of your head. And allow that energy to move up through the sky into deep space, finding a source of light in the cosmos. It could be the sun, it could be a star, it could be your place of origin. And connecting into that source of light, make a nice connection. Recognize how you're known by that source of light. And then gently bring that, through your awareness, bring that source of light back down through deep space, through our atmosphere, and gently into the top of your head. Again, filling your head and your shoulders, your body, your belly, your legs with that beautiful iridescent light energy, source energy. Right, and let these energies intermingle in your heart. And then just imagine that we're all in a circle, everyone who is currently listening, as well as anyone who may be listening in the future, all in a circle, and just allow your heart and this beautiful energy to connect with the hearts of everyone else here, amplifying our conscious connection in love. For our personal and collective benefit, and the benefit of all. Wonderful. Right, and let's just take a few breaths together. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And again, inhaling and exhaling. Right. Welcome again. You may feel a little different. Jamie Janover has long been interested in the intersection of science and all things considered spiritual. So when he first came across Nassim Harameyn's lecturing at a music festival in 2002, the dots connected. Ever since that time, Jamie has been delving ever deeper into the world of unified physics and ancient cultures through the lens of Nassim's theories. In his extensive world travels on tour as a professional musician, Jamie has explored ancient sites around the world, photographing and researching their mysterious origins. Jamie Janover was taught by Nassim Harameyn how to deliver presentations on his unified field theory in 2008 as one of the Resonant Science Foundation's original emissaries. In 2012, he became the Resonant Project's first ambassador and took over for Nassim in teaching 3-day delegate programs, an in-person course that has become the delegate program online course in the Resonance Academy. He has delivered hundreds of comprehensive presentations on Nassim's work at events, conferences, and festivals worldwide in places as far-reaching as New Zealand, Egypt, India, Canada, Indonesia, Spain, Costa Rica, Australia, Portugal, Italy, Romania, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, England, Mexico, and all across the U.S. from New York to Hawaii. I had the pleasure of interviewing Jamie back in March 2013 in a broadcast I called The Unified Field for Real. That broadcast, number 106, is available on iTunes through our archives if you care to check it out. Hello, Jamie, and welcome back to Human Spirit Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine.
Great.
Great to have you.
Great. Well,
Jamie,
thanks for that great intro and the great setting of the tone.
Yes. Yes. You're welcome. So let's just jump right in. How would you define zero-point energy?
Well, I think that when you say that term, zero-point energy, you're talking about something that's absolutely fundamental and that has had a lot of different names over a long period of time. And to be clear, I think you can call it whatever you want, right? And what it's referring to is the absolute base foundation of energy, the source of everything that we perceive as our reality. And they used to call it stuff like the ether. Before Einstein came along, there was this idea of the ether in physics. And that became a little bit too magical because, of course, physicists want to do science. They don't want to be mystics. They don't want to be philosophers. They don't want to be theologians. They want to deal with, hard data and facts and stuff that you can observe and quantify. And so the idea of an ether, this kind of mystical, magical, super fluid-like substance that permeated everything in the universe, was like a little bit too out there for the mainstream. And so they kind of wanted to tamper that down. And so they did mathematically in physics, which, is a long explanation, but the ether kind of went away for a while is what I'm saying in physics. And now the ether's coming back because it's so foundational that eventually everybody gets back to it, right? It used to be called the ether. Then they start calling it like the plenum. You ever heard that one, right? And then there's the source field, the 0-point field, the quantum foam. You can call it in different cultures, ancient cultures. There's these energy sources like chi and mana and prana. You could call it God. You could call it, love. You could call it whatever you want. Gravity. Gravity is kind of a separate thing, but the source of everything is this 0-point energy or this 0-point field, or you could call it the quantum foam. You could call it the quantum vacuum fluctuations of the fabric of the vacuum of the universe, because basically all the matter that we see is made of atoms, and the atoms are centered by protons and neutrons, and then the protons themselves are made of even smaller waveforms, the smallest possible waveform of the electromagnetic spectrum, which was originally discovered by Max Planck, which is why we call this very short little wavelength the Planck length or the Planck's distance. And so those little tiny vibrations are the foundation of our reality because they construct the protons that construct the atoms, that construct the molecules, that construct all matter that we observe in the universe. And so that field of vibration is the source field or the 0-point field or the vacuum, call it whatever you want. We're made of that. That's what we are, because we're made of matter, we're made of atoms. And the atoms themselves are 99.999999% quote unquote base, right? Whatever that is, right? If you want to study the universe and come up with a unified field theory that describes the whole universe, you better pay attention to the 99.999999% part, because even just like our bodies, that's what we're mostly made of. And so that space is not empty. It's absolutely filled with those little quantum vacuum fluctuations. And that's where it's very confusing to us, right? Because it seems like space has nothing. Space is actually full, and that is the zero-point field.
Excellent. Great description. How would you, can you just give us a bit of a primer on Nassim's unified theory and how it relates to zero-point energy?
Yeah, I mean, what Nassim did is he looked at the standard model of physics and he saw where there was big problems. Like, for example, gravity is not properly accounted for in the standard model of physics. This is the agreed upon model that is particle physics. It's what's being taught in universities around the planet. It's why they build particle accelerators to knock nuclei of atoms together to try to find smaller and smaller structures called subatomic particles, to try to find the base fundamental little building block of our reality, right? Which is essentially what those Planck little oscillators are, those little Planck distance vibrations. And so Nassim was looking at that and said, well, there's got to be something seriously wrong in the standard model. They must have made a wrong turn somewhere. And he did find this point in physics, it was, decades ago, where they took out the infinite nature of the ether and the quantum foam and the zero-point field. They didn't like that it was magical. So they said, okay, we'll just say space is really, really, really full of energy, but we're not going to say it's infinitely full. It's just, we can't go there and say that there's this infinite source field of energy that everything comes from. So we'll just say it's really full, and we'll just kind of round it off mathematically. And that trick that they did is what they call renormalization in physics. And so if you renormalize a number that's nearly infinite, if not infinite, that's an infinite fudge factor in your physics. And he pointed that out, and said, well, look, if you don't round that number out and you say, okay, well, how many of these tiny, tiny little vacuum fluctuations can we into a certain amount of space, a certain volume, then we could get a measurement in numbers for physics, right, of how much energy density there is in the structure of so-called quote-unquote empty space. And when you do that calculation, and they finally were able to do this in like 1990 at Seattle University, this was originally an experiment thought of by Henrik Casimir in like 1947, and they couldn't do it until 1990. They were able to isolate a sliver of the fabric of the vacuum of space by getting plates super duper close together, only a micron apart from each other. And they realized that space is not just empty, that there's all this frothing vacuum fluctuations in there. And they came up with a number that represented the energy density of the fabric of the vacuum. And that number is a 1 with 93 zeros after it. And that's grams per cubic centimeter. So we're talking 10 to the 93 grams per cubic centimeter is the supposed energy density of the fabric of the vacuum. That is so dense that it's denser than if you squash the whole universe into a cubic centimeter. So that should be very confusing to everybody because, of course, we walk around and, yeah, we have atmosphere, but let's say we were floating in between galaxies. If you move your hand in space, you don't feel anything, right? Like, what do you mean there's energy density there? I don't feel anything. But that's because the energy that's in the space is in a perfect state of equilibrium, a perfect balanced state. And why is it in a perfect balanced state? Why do we perceive it as nothing even though it's infinitely full? Because the structure of the space is absolutely perfect. The structure of the space is completely balanced. And then you're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? The structure of the space? Oh, yeah, what's the study of structure of space called again? Geometry. So the question is, what's the geometry of the fabric of the vacuum of the universe that would account for the fact that space is infinitely full of energy, even though we perceive it as being, nothing, empty? And that's because that geometry is an absolutely perfect scalar fractal structure. And that's what Nassim Haramein's unified field theory centers around, the geometry of space-time, which turns out to be an infinite tetrahedron array. In other words, tetrahedrons stacked together perfectly. And when you do that, you can actually mark the intersection of perfectly packed. If you put a sphere around each tetrahedron of a perfectly stacked tetrahedral array, you get a 3D flower of life symbol. The flower of life symbol that we see in ancient cultures around the world is not a two-dimensional symbol. It's a 2D representation of a three-dimensional structure that is the 3D sphere packing of tiny quantum vacuum fluctuations that make up the proton. So the flower of life is actually the blueprint, the foundational geometry of the structure of space-time itself that gives rise to all matter and all energy. It's the absolute fundamental pattern of our existence, and that's why the ancient cultures of the planet all over the world put that symbol all over everything and built pyramids that are in resonance with the cavities that form inside tetrahedral arrays, which are octahedral. And it all ties together in the end. That's the interesting thing, is that the unified physics of today's most modern physics is basically proving correct what the Ascended Masters have been saying in terms of esoteric spiritual thought and the geometric information and symbolic information that we see encoded into ancient civilizations, monuments, documents, and traditions from all across the entire planet.
Wonderful. Yeah, and is Nassim, and do you see it as talk to us a little bit about the idea of a black hole, and for me, a black hole and a white hole as the fractal pattern that on every scale that exists within everything, whether it's celestial bodies, all the way down through our scale in the human form, and all the way down into the quantum realities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because what you're talking about is a dynamic of energy that happens in the structure of space. So what I was talking about is the foundational pattern for the lattice, the 3D lattice, if you want to think of it that way, a scalar fractal 3D lattice that is the structure of space-time. And that is not a static thing, right? Everything is spinning. And so the foundational pattern of energy in the universe is a toroidal pattern, or a dual torus, more specifically, like a donut on a donut with stillness in the center. And so that would be kind of like our galaxy, right, where you have stars that spin in a accretion disk, which is kind of like along the equator of our galactic structure, which looks kind of like an apple, interestingly enough, out of the Bible, right? You've got the apple as a torus. You've got the energy field of the Earth, and the Earth's magnetic field is a dual torus. The sun is a torus. The galaxy is a torus. Turns out, yep, the atom is a torus. Turns out the energy coming out of the center of your heart, your magnetic field of your energy, or some people would call it your aura, or, you know, there is a direct electromagnetic field that's generated by your heart, and there's subtle energy fields, and those are all toroidal. Your chakras are toroidal. And then you could also see that the supercluster of galaxies that the Milky Way is a part of, called Laniakea, is a gigantic dual torus, and it's most likely that the universe itself is also a torus. And each one of those things that I described are also black holes. And this is where it's rather confusing, I think, to the average human, because all people were told when they were in school, and including till today probably most of the time, that a black hole is a cosmological-sized object that is absolutely ginormous and has so much mass that it creates a singularity, and space-time curves to infinity, and all this matter is getting sucked in there like a giant vacuum cleaner. Well, it turns out that that's just half the story. The information is coming out of the black hole as well. There are these jets that come out of the poles of black holes, and information and energy come out as well. Just like when you have water going down the drain, the reason you have water going down the drain is that there's a change of density, right? And the water doesn't just curve. Einstein talked about space-time curving, right? Going to singularity, and maybe if there's infinite space-time curvature, it forms a black hole. But Einstein didn't talk about the curvature curling like water going down the drain. In other words, Einstein's math didn't include spin. And so Nassim Haramein added torque and Coriolis forces to Einstein's field equations and changed space-time from curving to space-time curling. And when you do not renormalize the energy density of the fabric of the vacuum, then there's enough quantum vacuum fluctuations inside of a proton to make it a miniature black hole. So in other words, all atoms are black holes. All planets have a black hole in the center of them. All stars have a black hole in the center of them. All galaxies have a supermassive black hole in the center. All the galaxies in Laniakea are moving towards this area of space they call the quote-unquote Great Attractor, which is probably a large black hole sucking all the little baby black holes in the center of galaxies towards it. In other words, it's scalar black holes from infinitely small to infinitely large. And so you have to redefine a black hole, like you were saying, a black hole / white hole. It's actually a hole, W-H-O-L-E, a black hole, because there's a complete cycle of information crossing the event horizon in each direction, in and out. Those are the only two directions in the universe, right? There's no up and down. There's no left and right or north or south in the universe. There's only in and out of whatever your frame of reference is. And so the universe is talking to itself at all scales, at all times, because there's quantum wormholes coming off the surface of all the protons, connecting all the other protons, and they scale larger and smaller. So the universe is not confused. The universe is keeping its organization perfectly well right now. It's talking to itself from the quantum to the cosmological. And there's 121 orders of magnitude or something like that, I'm forgetting the number, of energy density gradient from the cosmological to the quantum. And it's called the vacuum catastrophe in physics. Nassim is about to put out a new paper. This is kind of the first mention of it, I think, even in any media. I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but he's going to be putting out a paper that deals with this cosmological constant problem and the vacuum catastrophe, solving for that, because it all ties together. There's not two different universes out there. And right now in our physics, we have two different sets of math. We've got quantum math and we've got cosmological math, Einstein's math and quantum field theory. And those are different sets of math. You can't apply the math of the big stuff to the sub-quantum, particles. They don't act like planets going around stars. But yet, all the big stuff in the universe is made of that small stuff. So it has to be connected somewhere, and that's where Nassim Haramein comes in, and he has a unified field theory that unifies the math of the infinitely large with the infinitely small.
Perfect. And I think that there is a YouTube video. In fact, my guest last month, Maury B. King, was talking about one of Nassim's YouTube videos called the Quantum Catastrophe. I believe that's what it's called. So people can
the vacuum catastrophe.
They want to look it up. And
it's a catastrophe because they don't know how that works.
Right, they don't know how to account for it. They don't know what to say about it. Yeah, just to give people a visual, I'd just like to give people a little bit of a visual about this double toroid thing that happens to be the fractal pattern that repeats at every scale, from the celestial all the way to the quantum. And for me, I see it as like a tornado sort of energy that curls around in one direction, and then comes to stillness, the singularity, and then spits out in the opposite direction. So a black hole with the energy coming into the singularity, and then from that singularity spinning out in the other direction. Is that a representation that works, Jamie?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually curling like water going down the drain, stillness, like you said. And it's not just a funnel, it's a funnel and a funnel. There are two funnels that meet at singularity. One is spinning in one direction, and like everything else in the entire universe, there's an equal and opposite to that dynamic on the other side. So it's curl and curl coming towards the center. In ancient cultures, they call it different things. Like, there's the bindu point in the center of your heart chakra. You could call that the singularity in the center of your black hole. It's just different terminologies for the same dynamic. So you can kind of visualize that when you're meditating, of an energy field coming, spinning, like the Kundalini vortex, right? They call it, spinning, getting smaller and smaller as it passes through your crown chakra, and it gets smaller and smaller until it gets all the way to stillness in the center of your heart. And then it spins equal and opposite out, away, the other direction. So if you're sitting, like you were just doing when we started the call, you can imagine that spin coming from the earth and coming from the heavens and meeting in the center of your heart. And there's a physics to that, right? And so now we have the physics to describe these dynamics that folks like Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and all the other ascended masters that have ever walked the planet were trying to explain to us, but that was before they invented science, right? It was before they invented physics. So they didn't have terminology for that. They didn't get to say, oh, now if you really want to get the torque going on your Kundalini vortex, imagine going to stillness like the center of a black hole. People would be like, what are you talking about, Buddha? What's a black hole? So now we have this physics and numerical mathematical equations that describe the dynamics that were being translated in a very poetic, philosophical, and ultimately religious way by all these different traditions around the planet. The next question, of course, is like, how did they know that? And you're opening up a big new box of a new chamber. There are no boxes, but a new boundary condition of investigation if you start asking how the ancient cultures happen to know about this geometry and this dynamic of space-time.
Yeah, well, I would say probably and just similar to Nassim, by looking at nature and how it behaves.
Yeah, you can look at nature and see how it behaves. However, our senses perceive something like 1/10 of the information that rides in the electromagnetic spectrum. In other words, some technology to help you figure out what's going on. Like if we didn't have microscopes and telescopes, we'd still be able to look at nature and we'd be okay. We'd be doing what we were doing for thousands of years. But then we started to look a little bit more closely thanks to this technology, and we said, wait a minute, it's a lot more complex than we thought. Now look at this. And now we're going deeper and deeper, and every single day we're going, oh, whoops. We thought it was like this. Now it makes sense. We just realized that we were wrong this entire time. Oops. And that's happening faster and faster. And one of those big oops is this idea that space is empty, that energy is scarce, that we have to fight over resources on this planet for, fossil fuels. When you realize how much energy is in space-time, then if you could just figure out how to get a trillionth of a percentage of that energy out of the structure of space, you're good to go no matter where you are in the entire universe, because space is everywhere. Space is under the ocean. It's in the middle of stars. It's in between galaxies. It doesn't matter where you are. There's space. So if you can get energy out of space, you're stoked. Then all of a sudden your entire civilization changes from scarcity consciousness to abundance consciousness. And instead of being like, how can I hoard resources and like make lines on the sphere and, create boundaries and all this stuff, then the big issue is like, how beautiful can we make everything today? How much fun can we have? How awesome can we have everybody's life be on this planet? That would be kind of the big problem, I think. If we had unlimited energy, then like you wouldn't need to work for energy anymore. You could be like, okay, cool, we've got enough light and heat and food for everybody. Let's have fun now instead of fighting over what turns out to be different descriptions of the same thing. Right? I always say that that we should be having Festival Earth. That, you know, when you get down to all the different religions and all of what their books and traditions say, and you go way, way back to what the origin story of where all this stuff comes from, it's all a description of the same thing in a different way, like different styles of music or different styles of dance. And so that's how I think spiritual information, as it relates to physics information, is actually going to be a key to helping everybody to understand everybody else and let everybody pray however they want and do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody else. And then at that point, it's Festival Earth.
It's a great way to put it, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, and why I convene these broadcasts around 0 point energy, because I really do feel that it has the potential and the reality for freeing humankind and allowing us to have unlimited, clean, decentralized energy that handles some of the really big picture issues of climate change and fossil fuel pollution and hunger and poverty and the first world problems of people feeling that they need to work 40 to 70 hours a week just to pay the bills. That when energy is free and unlimited and decentralized, energy is the basis of our cost of living. Everything becomes a manageable cost, and people become free to be the creative human beings they want to be, rather than working a workaday job in order to pay the bills. And everybody, we get into right relationship with our earth, and through conscious use of 0 point energy. Of course, the hitch so far has been that 0 point energy technologies have absolutely been used and are proven in the realms of the military industrial complex. You know that these technologies have been around since the 50s and have been used for unlimited energy production, for anti-gravitational propulsion, and for scalar, unfortunately, in the forms of weapons. So what I find to be really curious is, and just kind of a fascinating aspect of this whole thing, is that the technologies exist, and they have been, in secret in the military realms, and that, people who have developed devices or, engines that run on, 0 point energy, and all the ways that hobbyists and researchers have created devices, those technologies have been suppressed. Those people who created and invented those devices really have gotten stepped on and threatened, and some people killed. And so what I find to be fascinating is, because of the suppression, because you can go down into the suppression hole a very long distance, and it can be very, it can really make everybody feel like this is a non-possibility. But what I find interesting is that because of the suppression, people have to go about getting these devices and technologies out into the public arena in a completely different way. You can't just do it the same way we've been doing things, which is create something great, find an income stream to support it, market it to the public, and then make yourself a big pile of money. That can't happen because it's suppressed. Like that whole model can't work. it's requiring people to share their inventions, to share what they had found, their devices, to open source network and collaborate to bring the technology out into the public sector, which completely changes the way we do economy. We have to be heart-centered and collaborative in order for it to even work, which I just find to be an amazing irony, but kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, there's actually evidence to support that the highest levels of these technologies require a certain level of consciousness and awareness for the technology to work. And so that could be why we don't see the military industrialized complex having perfectly mastered these technologies. And we haven't seen them being used, I don't think, in an open way, at least, or any way that we're aware of, as a weapon. And, you know, some might argue that there's, you know, secret weapons for sure. But when we're talking about the type of technology that, you know, might be super ancient technology, the technology that allows you to travel across the galaxy, it's probably not that easy. It's not that easy to just you can't just grab it from somebody else and turn it on and expect it's going to work. Like, what's your cell phone going to look like in 1,000 years? I guarantee it's not going to have a keyboard on it, you know? So this technology is probably so far beyond what the normal scientific community is aware of that it might not always work if you don't have the right intention. And obviously you don't see a Kickstarter campaign for a free energy device very easily because they do get squashed. I mean, imagine if they didn't squash Tesla, we'd be flying around the solar system right now.
Right.
There was only one Tesla at that time, so it was easy to squash him. You know, J.P. Morgan was like, wait, if you give electricity to everybody through the atmosphere, then I can't put the meter on the side of the house so that the guy has to work 70 hours a week to pay that bill. And that's how we got to this. If Tesla didn't agree to that contract and then tear up his royalty, he was supposed to get like a few cents on every kilowatt of electricity. Can you imagine if Tesla was still getting royalties on every kilowatt of electricity? Then Tesla and Tesla's descendants would be like, Festival Earth, they were cool. They were getting to do cool stuff. But then the powerful bankers were like, oh, no, this is our key to, like, suppress everything and get so much control and so much money. And so now there's probably like 100,000 Teslas on the planet right now. You know what I mean? There's so many genius, brilliant inventors that are making stuff and be like, I don't exactly know how this works, but it's working. Check it out. And people are like, oh, my God. You better hide that thing. And so everybody's got them. Everybody's like waiting, and it's going to come popping out. They're running out of time. They're running out of money. You can't play whack-a-mole with 100,000 inventors anymore. Exactly. You can't just go assassinate every inventor. They were doing a pretty good job all the way until about the 70s and 80s. Then the internet got invented, and then people were putting this stuff on YouTube. And it was like, hey, look, here's free energy device, blueprints, PDF, download it 100,000 times, and then it gets taken down. And it's like, meanwhile, it's on 100,000 hard drives around the planet, and everybody's in their garage being like, oh, look, I got it to work. It's amazing, right? So we're going to be okay. It's just going to be dramatic. I think it's going to be a little bumpy, but I think we're going to make it.
A little bumpy, yeah. Might be a little bumpy. But that's what I think is, that's why I feel like this kind of a broadcast, and for some reason I've just become completely crazy and passionate about this. But I feel like, you know, the public needs to know this is a real possibility. This isn't just, you know, science fiction. This is like true and actual, and a real possibility for planet Earth. Not only to for us to get in right relationship with the planet and be harmonious in in our relationship with the planet and, keeping it healthy, but also because our consciousness has to be heart-based in order for it to really work and for it to have all the benefits that it does, we have to change in marked ways as a civilization. We need to come back into the recognition that the energy that is driving everything, including us, is one energy. It's source energy. It can be called, God or quantum foam or whatever you want to call it, but that it is one energy. The whole thing is one, and that when we become responsible on this planet for our technology and our relationship with one another and with our Earth, then we open the possibility for open contact with other civilizations. And then the party really gets started in terms of being able to collaborate with civilizations that may be thousands of years advanced from us in terms of their technology. Then we can start to really clean things up in terms of the destruction we've done to the planet, and really, become the emissaries and the ambassadors in a galactic relationship.
Look at all those isolated tribes that we know of in the Amazon basin, and do we go in and go and try to talk to them and try to get them to be part of our society? No. Right now there are laws in the Amazon saying you're not allowed to get within 40 miles of this one guy, right? There's this one guy who's the last guy of his tribe, and you're not allowed to get anywhere close to him. And then there's a bunch of other civilizations down there where there's laws saying you cannot go in there and interact with them. You'll give them diseases. They're going to die like a lot of the native people did when the Europeans came. So it would kind of make sense, wouldn't it, that if you had to be at an appropriate level of heart and consciousness to interact with super advanced technologies, which are basically instant karma devices. Like if you have bad vibes and you put it into a black hole, it's going to feed back onto you at the speed of light. It's feedback loop, right? So you've got to be pure of heart in the eyes of the Lord, right? So it says in the Bible. That was talking about a device called the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. I hate to drop this bomb on your show, dropping the Bible reference, but what I'm saying is that if there are civilizations that are flying around with ships that are driven by, gravity singularity drives, and they're looking at us and they're like, yeah, they're still mailing pipe bombs to each other, we should probably wait a little bit, right? Like, they're not going to come talk to us and be like, hey, look what we do, until we figure out our own deal and we stop bombing each other. Like, you guys are kidding me, really? You guys, bathrooms for different colors of the same species? Wait till they find out that there's like green people and blue people. Are you going to have different bathrooms for those folks when they come? Like, I don't think so. Like, we are so in the dawn ages still. We're not quite ready to interact with those folks, and they know it. And so they're just kind of hanging out, and it's going to take a little while. And then eventually they'll be like, okay, maybe we'll interact with you now that you guys aren't just like building nuclear warheads and stuff like that. So. Yeah,
and I feel like that is where we're going. Barbara Marx Hubbard calls it the awakening of a new species, and I really do feel that it is a speciation event. We are becoming new, and part of that is heart resonance, really living in heart resonance, and getting the reality of who we actually are, which is spiritual beings, unlimited creator beings who are co-creators and collaborators with all of it. And the way I see, this fractal pattern, and tell me if you share this view, Jamie, the fractal pattern of the energy coming into the singularity and then the energy moving out of the singularity, and the in-breath and out-breath of the divine. I mean, it's throughout every religious way of looking at it in this mystical way. But that the singularity, that point of singularity, that stillness, that presence, that is the place where source energy is strung through everything, like a string of pearls.
Yeah, the string of pearls is kind of like the quantum wormhole that connects the singularities. That's how all this stuff is connected. It's scalar black holes with singularity in the center of each one of them, from really large black holes like the universe to the proton. And then there's quantum wormholes where, they're called Einstein-Rosen bridges in physics. The quantum entanglement is the result of these quantum wormholes through space-time. EPR. In any case, that's what you're talking about, is that the whole thing has to be conscious of itself, and we're made of that stuff. So all the singularities are connected, and all the singularities have all the information of the whole. It's a holofactographic field where all the information of the entire universe is holographically encoded inside of each proton. And so there kind of is just one thing that's all just chopped up in a very ornate way.
Right. And which for me is the, kind of provides a model for the quantum field effects of that when we're aware of that, when we actually drop into the singularity in our own hearts and allow ourselves to open to that level of awareness, we have full access to all information that ever existed. The whole Akashic array is, we have access to that. And when we get ourselves and start operating at that level, it's multidimensional. That is amazing. It's fully empowered. It's fully connected and reverential to all of life.
Right.
Then we're cooking with gas. Then we, to use a bad analogy, but then we're holding the consciousness that allows us to make this happen on our planet, to actually create the devices, decentralize, just get it right, and get back into right relationship with the planet. And Festival Earth, absolutely.
That's right. And it's going to be bumpy in the sense that not everybody is on the same level at the same time. And so it's going to be this evolutionary process. It's going to happen in waves, like everything, like in nature, and the way ecosystems adapt to change and stuff. I think we're experiencing it on a very high level right now. The acceleration has never been faster, and it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Continuous.
But thankfully, we're connecting. I mean, with the internet and the fact that you can research just about anything, and that we can connect. Now that we have formats like this and like Zoom calls where you can be in real time with people on video, the level of connectivity and the ability to reach across throughout the whole globe and connect with other people who are awakening to these same realities. That just builds a momentum that's unstoppable. It's creator's impulse. It's an evolutionary impulse for us to become fully conscious, heart-based co-creators and get this party started.
Yeah, it's definitely been started. That's for sure. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because you are adding torque to the spin of change by doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to let everyone know that you could reach Jamie through the Resonance Science Foundation and the Resonance Academy at resonance.is. Resonance.is. Are you doing any current programs or?
Yeah, the Resonance Academy is amazing. There's a foundational course called the Delegate Program, which encapsulates 30 years of Nassim Haramein's research into the structure of space-time and unified field theory. It goes deep into the history of physics and how we got to what we consider to be the model that we have now, and then, like I was saying, where the model went wrong, and if you fix those things, then what unified physics shows us, and the implications and the applications of that physics, like the technologies going forward. And so that course is super epic, 6 modules. There's about, I think there's people from 80-something countries in there, and we do those Zoom calls, like you were saying, where we have live hangouts, and once a month there's a Live with Nassim, and you can just get on video and ask him any question in the entire universe. It's pretty amazing to hear how Nassim on the fly will answer the most challenging questions about really disparate topics. And then also within the Academy, there's other elective courses. I have my own course called Ancient Egypt Revisited that's all about our trip to Egypt and looking at these ancient sites and the evidence of ancient technology use. There's a couple of great courses by a polymath and inventor, incredible thinker named Robert Grant, and he's got a class called The Etymology of Number, and then another course once you finish that one called Language of Light, and it's all about the vortex mathematics and frequency and resonance, and he's discovered incredible new mathematical constants based on proportions of the Great Pyramid of Giza and all sorts of interesting stuff. So those courses are amazing. Then there's a biophysicist in the Resonance Academy faculty called William Brown, and he has a great course called Big Questions, and he goes into the quantum biology and the biology of consciousness and the microtubules, and gets very technical in that course, as well as being very interesting from a metaphysical and spiritual sense of understanding consciousness, which is something that physics generally doesn't try to even touch, right? Because that's too close to talking about God or something like that. So, but this is the thing, is that Resonance Science Foundation is this place where they're coalescing and distilling and bringing together spiritual information, physics information, and social consciousness, and being a nexus of those three things. And there's not really too many places you can go or to find information that draws upon all those things at the same time. Our society and our education is fairly compartmentalized at this point, and the Resonance Science Foundation is, very broad in its scope. There are no boxes in a holofractographic universe, you know what I'm saying?
Lovely, really great. And you can also reach Jamie through his website, JamieJanover.com, JamieJanover.com. Jamie is an amazing photographer and musician, and there's lots of great information there too. Thank you so much for being here, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what you're doing, and it was an honor to be able to delve into these, down all these various rabbit holes, fractal rabbit holes with you. Thank you very much.
Right. And just for everyone to know, next month's broadcast of Human Spirit Radio will be on Friday, November 23rd at 2 p.m. Pacific. That's the day after Thanksgiving here in the U.S., and if you'd like to sign up for an email announcement just once a month for upcoming shows, you can join our list at HumanSpiritRadio.com, and you can also enjoy the archives there as well. Thank you all for being here. Have a great month, and keep tending the evolutionary fire within you, gently and kindly. Until we meet again, love and blessings.
Thank you so much. I'll see you all out there in Festival Earth.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.